I'm Andrew Murata, host of the Education, Leadership, and Beyond podcast, a part of the Education Podcast Network, just like the show you are listening to now. Shows on the network are individually owned, and opinions expressed may not reflect others. Find other interesting education podcasts at edupodcastnetwork.com.
Hey, welcome back. Steve here, and today I'm talking with Vince Shorb. He is an advocate for financial education reform in high schools. He is also the CEO of the National Financial Educators Council. So much to learn today about adding personal finance and work world soft skills to our curriculum. Oh, lots to think about, lots to learn. Thanks for listening. Oh, by the way, before you go, have you thought about helping out the podcast? There's a couple different ways you could do that, and here are a couple of them. How about tell a friend and share the links? Or how about go to my website and leave a review and subscribe? Or how about click on the link on my website homepage to buy me a coffee? By doing this, you could donate $1 or $2 to help me address the costs associated with producing the podcast. What do you think? That'd be so cool. You are awesome. Enjoy the show.
Yeah, I always had an interest in money from a young kid. I was, starting little businesses, selling lizards, collecting cans, all that fun stuff. And when I was in high school, I was typically the kid in the back of the class, not messing around too much, very respectful, but I was reading real estate investing books. I was really reading stock investing books. And back then we had old books, that you find in the library, or I'd borrow my dad's old books. So I'd always valued my education and what I was learning about money.
It's the Education Podcast, your favorite show, with lots of groovy guests and they share what they know. So crank it up to 10 and let your neighbors know that here's another show with Dr. Steve Milletto. Teaching, learning, leading, K-12. Teaching, learning, leading, K-12. Teaching, learning, leading, K-12. With Dr. Steve Milletto.
Vince Shorb stands as a prominent advocate for financial education and reform in high school subjects nationwide. His primary objective is to ensure that today's youth graduate with the practical skills they need to navigate life's challenges and empower them with essential knowledge for leading secure, fulfilling lives. Drawing from his extensive 30-year experience in the financial services and financial education sectors, Shorb has witnessed firsthand the financial struggles Americans face. He acknowledges that many long-term issues originate in early adulthood, often stemming from students graduating with insufficient or no financial education and lacking the essential skills sought by employers in the modern workforce. In 2006, Shorb took a pivotal step toward addressing this issue by establishing the National Financial Educators Council, or NFEC, an organization committed to tackling the epidemic of financial illiteracy. As the current CEO of the NFEC, he leads an IACET accredited company and a certified B corporation, further underscoring his dedication to advancing financial education and subject reform in U.S. high schools. Oh, this is going to be a cool conversation today. Vince, thanks so much for being on the show, and say hi to everyone.
Steve, thanks for having me. Good to be here.
Well, glad to have you here, and let's start with this. You're the CEO of the National Financial Educators Council. Could you talk about what its mission is?
Yeah, our mission's evolved over the years. When we initially were founded in 2006, I was one of the founding members. We were boots on the ground delivering financial education. So we were doing presentations, workshops, these higher profile celebrity events. We really try to make financial education entertaining. And back then, there was nobody really sharing information, curriculum, how to teach, processes of conducting successful programs. And after our success, people started to ask us, could they use our materials? And so our mission shifted since being that boots on the ground to really helping those people in communities build and scale financial wellness programs. So we do a lot of educator training. We provide resources and the processes to them. Our goal is really to increase access to quality materials. One of the big problems in this industry, most financial education is simply presentation, right? They'll speak at you for 60 minutes and you're gone. So we really want to increase the quality of education, increase the outcomes that students receive. In addition, it's about being an advocate as well. We're big advocates promoting financial education. Obviously, schools is one area we're trying to get financial education more into and more ingrained with the lesson plans, but also with parents. We feel parents are a important and needed asset to be in this mission because they're going to have the ability to help mold and modify their kids' behaviors to be more successful when they grow up on their own. So that's our mission now, and we're really committed to helping people, again, avoid the mistakes that I made coming out of high school, going into college, so they can work toward financial wellness earlier.
Excellent. I appreciate you explaining that, because I want to use that to lead us into just some cool stuff here that we're talking about with personal finance. So tell me what got you personally interested in helping with, bringing personal finance to high schools.
Yeah, I always had an interest in money from a young kid. I was, starting little businesses, selling lizards, collecting cans, all that fun stuff. And when I was in high school, I was typically the kid in the back of the class, not messing around too much, very respectful, but I was reading real estate investing books. I was really reading stock investing books. And back then we had old books, that you find in the library, or I'd borrow my dad's old books. So I'd always valued my education and what I was learning about money. And I had some early success with finances. I bought real estate when I was in my 19 years old, and 20, I bought another piece and started investing in the stock market, had a few minimal successful businesses that were kind of going. And people started to ask me questions about money, and I really enjoyed that. I enjoyed explaining things to them. I enjoyed doing their budgets. I enjoyed helping them. Now, I did get in some trouble in college, and I didn't really manage my, I started investing with credit card money, which I should not have done. So I made some dumb mistakes myself. And so I went into financial services to really help people. I spent 15 years there. And what I found after a decade plus was oftentimes I was putting a Band-Aid on people. So my last 7 years were in the mortgage space, and I would help them out. I'd pay off all their debt, lower their payments. They'd be saving a few $1,000s a month. I'd be very excited for them. And then 4, 5, 6 months later, they'd come back. Yeah, I need another 50,000. I need another 100,000. And I ended up scolding many of my clients because I'm like, what are you doing? Please don't stop. I don't want to see you again. It was a cycle that they were in. And I also noticed that they had no idea, even though they've been through several purchases, several refinances, they didn't know even the basics about money. And so I took a trip up to Montana where my parents live. And I was talking to my mom. I'm like, I'm kind of tired of financial services. I need to find something new. And she brought me back to my time in high school. She said, you always wish they were teaching personal finance in high school. And that led to the start of the National Financial Educators Council going on 18 years ago.
That's cool. That's very cool. That's, it's interesting because there's, especially, by the way, that you were reading real estate books and, money books and stuff like this, especially we talk about checking them out of high school library. So, but I know that, one of the things that I ran into that I guess I didn't ever really expect to, because both my mother and father were in business, and it was one of the things when I went to this military school after high school to become an officer in the Army, and while I was there, I discovered that because they would have you put money, the adults put money into an account because they didn't, unless you used the vending machines, they didn't want you to have cash. Where you were going with cash back and forth. So you created these checking accounts, and they wanted you to learn how to use a checking account. And one of the things I discovered is that some of these young people, they thought they had money because they had checks. And I always thought that was a joke until I witnessed it. It's like, well, I'm doing good. I got 5 more checks left. It's like, yeah, okay. I'm not sure if you're watching the Three Stooges do finances or something. But yeah, this is kind of an interesting thing. So what do you think are some of the most important lessons that high school students need to learn, from a personal finance course?
Just to simplify, I think life in personal finance comes down to the ability to save money, right? And it only involves income and expenses. So just to completely simplify personal finance, I would say that. But, with high school students, I think the main preparation is preparing them for near-term life events. And we know the biggest mistakes people make when they come out of high school: credit card debt, not having the right bank accounts open, not knowing how to manage their accounts, which impacts their credit, not having the basic understanding of budgeting to move out on their own. A big one also is student loan debt. So we know the major pitfalls. There's 10, 15 major pitfalls that we can quantify. And really, I think schools should focus on the most important and urgent things in students' lives. I see a lot of these state financial literacy mandates that will just have a random list of topics. So I do reviews of these state mandates. I just reviewed Massachusetts Bill 4199 that listed 70 topics to cover in 60 hours, but let's say 50 instructional hours of class. And some of them range from cryptocurrency to online stock trading, but there's no mention of debt, right? So they oftentimes
Nice.
they just list random topics, but it's hard to quantify success. It's hard to quantify outcomes. If I have an outcome goal and I backwards design it with the outcome goal is every student will have confidence to move out on their own and have created a plan to do so. Now I have a clear outcome. We can get into project-based learning and other things that will help them prepare for that real life event. Or if my outcome goal is, hey, making sure every student has the proper bank accounts and the proper setup so their bills are paid automatically, established before they graduate, that's something we can quantify. So, I think the beauty of personal finance is there's very clear outcome goals we want for students and we can measure. It's not going to be just with pre and post tests. We need to get creative with the measurements and be able to show things, but it's empirically showing that, hey, they've done the work that they can actually apply in the real world. So again, full circle, preparing them for the near-term life events so they avoid those problems. And when you avoid those problems, it's much easier to walk around a hole than dig yourself out of a deep pit. So that's the goal. And I've been there. I dug myself out of that pit early, but it puts off important things like saving, investing, and other things. I know a lot of people out there looking at the $1.7 trillion college loan debt. A lot of people are having that struggle as well. And I think just by implementing that very simple thing, what's the most important and urgent things that are going to impact our youth, we can shape curriculum that would benefit them.
Yeah, I think one of the things that's really interesting in today is this, and I don't know the data on this, I just know that I've read a lot of articles about the number of young people that after high school, they move back into the house, and actually in many cases, the parents are now supporting them again, and which is kind of crazy because I pretty much had one thought in mind, and that was on the other side of high school, I might come home for the holidays, but I'm going whatever direction that world is taking me, and instead it's doing the opposite right now, and that brings me to this question, which is, I mean, what do you think are some of the biggest issues that young adults face in understanding finances when they're in their 20s and 30s? I mean, this is, it's one thing to be in high school learning a little bit about this, but, it's going to impact them down the road, especially if there's thoughts of, maybe not living with mom and dad.
Yeah, no, great point. And, really, it's when you're not taught about money, there's a big problem. You have a lot of holes, right? I mean, when you're not confident to make those decisions. Now, and we also have to understand that financial habits form very young. Kids are influenced by advertisers. Kids are influenced by social media. They're influenced by their peers, and also their parents. So they have a lot of influences. Sadly, advertisers aren't advertising, hey, save your money. You don't need this now. Buy this when you have that money saved. They're advertising, hey, buy it now. Otherwise, you're a loser, right? Not in so many words, but the overall theme of the thing is, hey, you want to be cool, you want to be successful, you want to have the partner in your life, this product will do it. So a lot of negative influencers out there with regards to money and finance. And so their habits were formed young. Brown University has a study out by 9 years old, the work ethic habit is formed in kids. So that's a big one, right? So they're shaped very young. And this carries with them oftentimes into adulthood. And if we're not doing anything to counteract those negative influencers and also empower them with the knowledge, they're going to be lacking all of the basics. And really the beauty is with personal finance, it's not rocket science. I mean, the basics are the basics. And kids are graduating school without even knowing things like budgeting, things like, well, your example earlier was funny about the check writing. They don't have checks now, but very similar with debit card. Hey, I have my debit card, I could just keep ringing this up. And, some kids are just used to their parents paying for things. Hey, I need this. Okay, here you go. Here's a debit card. Here's a credit card. So they're not building the skill sets like delayed gratification. They're not building the work ethic skill sets that say, hey, I need to work and commit effort, time, and energy toward this outcome goal. And there's no real motivation oftentimes for them to leave, right? So if their parents are enabling them to stay at home and kind of not do work and so forth, well, that's enabling them to kind of continue that life. And when's it going to end? I know people that are living with 40-year-old youth. And I call them youth because until you're independent and making your own financial decisions and managing your life on your own, that's when you become an adult. I don't think it's an age thing. You could be 50 and still be a child. So I think it's really important that, hey, we're preparing these youth to counteract all those negative influences. And also, I know you and me share a similar life path. It's like, hey, let me out at 17. I was out paying my own bills, figuring things out. I had great parents. I love my parents. I loved it. But I felt, hey, I want to be that man now, right? I want to make my own decisions, have people over when I want. I don't want to have rules. And I think when kids stay in that set where, hey, I'll just do whatever, and there's no motivation for them to leave, I think it kind of clips their wings. And it's sad. It's like, what do they want out of life? And until you take some risk, until you're out there experiencing life as an independent person, I think it's missing a thing that adds a lot of value and color to people's lives. So yeah, I think just the basics, the earning, the spending, the saving, the living independently, just some of the basics that are still being missed by our middle 20 age crew out there.
I think that's so important to talk about because that's, it's with some good introduction to it in high school and just some of the simple stuff, because some of that stuff you were mentioning before, some of these states introduce all this information that it's like, there are simple things like, it's not a good idea to have like 6 credit cards and use one to pay off the other one and then especially and by the way, if I offend somebody, I'm sorry, but the debit card to me is like one of the great evils, because all you got to do is use that thing and it's doing like its name says right off the bat. And if you get in the habit of using it to go out on I went to a baseball game last night, and you see people around you taking that thing out, and they're paying some pretty good prices for that those adult beverages and things like that. And it's like, I wonder when they see that bill.
Yeah. And a lot of people I know nowadays are really struggling. They're not prepared for inflation, higher rates. And, it's like they just don't prepare for these life events. And I think a lot of life is, hey, living below your means so you're prepared. I don't make any judgments on people. It's, hey, if you're able to pay your own bills and do all that, wonderful. But I still see, when we look at 2/3 of the country that are in a financially vulnerable or coping situation, it's scary for me, because I know just by looking at when I was in the loan industry, I did over 10,000 loans. So I saw everything: credit report, asset statements, bank statements, you name it. And I was scared for most of the people, because even though they were driving a nice car, even though they lived in a nice area, I saw they were a few paychecks away from some very serious problems. They weren't liquid. They couldn't cope with major things. We saw some issues when COVID hit, right? I had some even friends that went through some major challenges when that hit, because their business went down and they had other challenges. And now, your average person's really struggling with higher payments. Food prices are just astronomical, and people just aren't prepared, and I think one of the big things that about life is preparation. And the beauty of today is we can actually prepare. If we look back, decades and decades ago or centuries ago, they didn't have things that would allow them to prepare often: refrigeration, other aspects that allowed them to really be secure in the future. And we have these things now. So it's about, I think a lot of it's about preparation to make sure, hey, not only your near-term bills are paid, but you are planning for those upcoming life events. Maybe it's having a kid, maybe it's buying a home, whatever. But you also have that emergency money that's continuing to grow in case anything happens. And we've been very blessed in the era we've lived in. I mean, things have been very great if we look historically. So I always like to let people know, hey, it's about preparation for continuing your lifestyle the way you want it, so you're secure, your family's secure. And I think that's a big backbone of financial education, is that preparation.
I like that. I appreciate you sharing that. Let's go a little bit bigger in the picture here. I mean, as the job workforce landscape is changing, what do you think high schools should do to prepare students for jobs that may or may not exist yet? Since that's part of if you're going to make money, it's got to come from that area.
Yeah, I have a lot of suggestions for that. If we look at historically, again, going back a century, high schools are teaching the same things they were 100 years ago, even back in the late 1800s. It's the same basic topics: math, science, social studies, English, and some of those are needed, some aren't needed by people. If we look at, let's say STEM topics, science and math, we have about 6 to 7% of STEM related jobs where those people need to have that high quality math education, high quality science, but the other 90%, not so much. So, when I always like to simplify things in life. When I look at a tribe, if I had a tribe, if we were living with 100 people, I'd want somebody to be able to fish, somebody to be able to hunt, somebody to be able to garden, somebody to be able to sanitize water, somebody to be able to build shelter. But instead, we're in school, we're training all one type of person. They all have the same subject matter. There's no freedom to explore different paths. And I think that's a problem, simply because it's not preparing people for what's coming up in the future. Times have changed. We have, refrigeration, flushing toilets, flying cars, AI, and yet we're teaching the same subject matter. And I think I think it should all be included as an elective, but I think giving students freedom to go down paths of interest that they have would yield amazing results. In education, one of the biggest motivators for somebody to learn about a subject is having reasons to learn. If they see themselves as that fireman, let's say, well, then they may need to know these topics, right? And they may find that interest if they can relate it to those topics. If they, are interested in AI and tech, well, maybe there's a path for them to learn. And with technology, we're so blessed. We don't have the Dewey Decimal System that we have to go look up outdated books, as you referred to before. Yeah, I was reading books from the 1960s in my library. Nowadays I can go online right now, and I'm actually taking a class through Stanford completely free on education reform. And it's all printed there, the exact curriculum. So there's so many ways to educate our youth today. I think just adding some flexibility into that learning pathway, and you're building some key skill sets that can apply to other areas of life as well. So I just think changing the subject so it's preparing them for near term. And I think it's really critical for policymakers, administration to look at colleges, to look at where the job landscape will be, not today, but 20 years from now, right? So that they can adjust and modify the curriculum to adapt so that these youth are getting prepared for things that will be around as opposed to things that are outdated. When we look at our college graduates, we have 50% of graduates, or 45%, my bad, 45% of graduates a decade after they graduate college still are not in a field that requires a college degree. So it's really sad when you look at that, because that just tells me they're taking classes that don't relate to the modern day workforce. And I think there's a lot we could do. I think, it's our reasons we have to do it is because it's getting these kids into trouble. We see it from the student loan debt side. We see it from how people are feeling and their excitement for the future. So there's a lot of problems, and I think we can address by just being more flexible with education.
Awesome. One of the things that this definitely lends itself to that we got to talk about is that, if you're looking towards some sort of career path or career line and these jobs that are being created and over, some may be wiped out and new ones created over the next 20 years or so, what are some of those soft skills that employers are looking for in future employees? I mean, things that they need to start understanding that kind of come with the territory. What do you think?
Let me start with a very basic one here, Steve. I did a interview process of high school students, and it was for a nonprofit, and were mock interviews, right? So we're training kids on how to interview. First off, how to shake a hand. Second, how to look somebody in the eye. Third, how to interview. Fourth, have a resume. They graduate high school with no resume, no practice on interviewing, no knowledge of what jobs are out there. So let's just get those basic ones done. Then I think it's just communication skills, professional communications, how to communicate with your boss without emojis, how to, relate to them. And I get the world's different now with this generation, which is cool. I like they have their own language and so forth. Every generation does, but you can't bring that into the workforce. Basic customer service skills. I think basic entrepreneurship skills as well. It makes you a valuable employee because you're looking at the company's bottom line. You're understanding, your job is only your job is only as secure as you make it. So if you see technology creeping up that's going to do your spreadsheet for you, you need to hustle, gain some skill sets to learn new tech skills, so your job isn't obsolete. Or if you see people outperforming you, what are you going to do that? So I think just a basic understanding of business, how it operates, how you can be an integral player in there. The basic skills most employers want: customer service, professional communication. And first we need to get the job, right? So that resume and that, I think those are all basic things that I'm really shocked that aren't taught more directly in schools. And there's plenty of ways that we can integrate those into some subject matter already existing. It's just not done that I've seen on a scale that's really benefiting the majority of people across this country.
Yeah, it's interesting because I think some of the things that whether it's getting a part-time job during the summer or something like that, and how it's been introduced in the past, whether you came from a family that was good at it or not, doesn't really matter. A lot of times we got introduced to soft skills simply because we went to work for somebody. And now, I think, with the times that they are, we have lots of people from all kinds of different ages that are looking for some of those same types of jobs. I don't think it's as common as it was that, like I worked as a grocery bagger and all that good stuff in a grocery store during the summer and did a couple other things. And then when I was in college, got a job at a McDonald's and then a Sears. And for those of you who don't know what a Sears is, they look it up in a history book. And, and it was through all those things and through the different HR people that you're working with and maybe the different assistant managers and stuff, you started learning certain things about how to interact with people. And, it's funny because the shake hands one, as a former high school principal, one of the things at graduation time, when we do the graduation practice, I would stand up on the stage and practice. You're going to shake my hand. All right. Now, if you want to give me a hug, that's fine. You can do that too. But you're going to shake my hand because on the other side of my shoulder is a photographer waiting to take a picture of you. So you're going to smile. And, and it's all those types of things. It's interesting how when you think about how a lot of times just the shaking of the hand, people, they don't really shake a hand, or they grab the tips of your fingers or something like that. And, and it's all of that is something that's been, important for a long time with people interacting with people. So,
yeah, as a former busboy, waiter, door hanger, I'm glad those jobs, they build good skill sets, and in conflict resolution, all those things are just about, you need to learn sometimes on the job. And I think encouraging that, I haven't seen a school yet, and it hasn't been deep research by far, but I haven't seen high school where they've had job placement services for high school students. You've probably seen more of the landscape than me, but I think, hey, when you turn 15, 16, whatever the legal age is in your state, that should be something that's encouraged. You got to be able to handle your homework, your school, your relationships, and a job. But I haven't seen. I think that'd be a great way to build. So when I was in high school, that was how I built. Started. I was 15 years old, got a job, and busboy, and I learned so many things. Ability to communicate. I wasn't very, very good at talking. I'm still not great at talking, but it helped me really break out of my shyness and communicate with people when I had to take their order. So I think it did a lot for me in terms of that. I always encourage young people to get a job as a waiter, as a busboy, getting tips and learning those skill sets you need to communicate, handle stress, being able to juggle 20 tables at once and still put on a brave face.
That's cool, because I've always been amazed by that person who's really good at the idea that when they come to the table, that they know how to kind of, it's not just about, it's about the customer more than it is about whatever they're doing. So you find the ones who have discovered that it's kind of like almost entertainment. You have to figure out how to engage them enough so that it's more than just, what do you want?
The tips relying on how well they feel at the end of that meal, not just the food, but how well you handled it. And it makes a big difference. I had a young gentleman wait on us the other night at a restaurant, and he made a mistake with the water, and he ran back and said, "Hey, don't drink that. I think I messed up." And he was feeling real bad. But I'm like, "Hey, that's brave. Nice work there." Because he could have just said, "Oh, it might be okay." But instead, he took the initiative to say, "Hey, I think I might have mixed something up there." and took the heat, and he got a nice reward at the end as far as a tip for me.
Very cool. Very cool. Yes, that's that's always nice. It'd be a lot better than like drinking dishwater or something. So
I didn't ask him what it was, but there's one that had a little pink in there. I'm like, okay, good call, man.
nice. All right. So, let's talk about this. Let's go back towards the high school again. What do you think are some of the biggest obstacles to changing high school curriculum to add personal finance courses and the focus on those needed soft skills for the coming workforce? What do you think?
I think it starts with there's a few areas I'll address. With the college admission standards, I think is a major area. There hasn't been much reform in that for a century. So they're requiring certain things to go to college, and personal finance isn't one of those. So that's a major problem. If we look at the public opinion side, I think public opinion's far in support of financial education. I think we have every study I've seen, 80, 90% plus have said, I wish I was taught, it should be taught in schools. But I think that presents a dilemma too, because when you have so many people for something, there's not that conflict. There's not that, nobody's protesting financial education. Nobody's trying to cancel me for saying financial education, which I think is almost a bad thing, right? So I almost want some people saying, hey, don't teach our kids about money. So there's more controversy. From the policy side, so legislatures, people passing legislation, I think they're just doing it from, hey, look at me standpoint. And they also realize that it's hard to pass bills that are comprehensive that will make a real difference. So part of it is, hey, we'll just pass something that's very quick and easy that I know can get through to pat myself on the back. Over the last, say, 5 years, 10 years, we've had, within last year, we had 2 members of the House of Representatives contact us asking us to back their bills. I said, absolutely not. But we created a framework for policymakers and administrators that outlines good policy for high school financial education. So we provide them that. We say, hey, we'll support you on a bill that makes a difference. We've had a dozen or so state policymakers reach out over the last 5-10 years. Same thing. We've always tried to help, but we've never backed any financial literacy bill. So I think on the legislative side, they're passing rough things. And again, they've never done a financial education program. So what we see on the majority of these, they just list random subjects. They don't require any teacher training. Many are unfunded mandates. So they'll tell the schools, hey, you need to go teach this. Oh, by the way, you get no money to do so, right? We're not going to train your teacher. You get nothing. So figure it out. And then from the administration side, even when there is policy, I think there's a chance for the administration to say, okay, hey, they said we have to do this at minimum. Let's make this really valuable. Let's make this really something that can impact students. But again, I think, it's just, how the school, it's a lot of red tape, and, it's tough to navigate and tough to increase the requirements, especially with the time restrictions. Where I think we've seen a lot of success is actually individual teachers that say, hey, I think this is important. I want to bring it into my classroom. It may not be something that's I'm teaching, but I want to enhance this. So, I think if we look at, college requirements, policymakers, administrators, individual teachers, I think all play an important role in this. And I just, in the public opinion, I just want to get a groundswell saying, hey, let's make change happen. I don't want to wait 10 years. When I started this company in 2006, I'm like, okay, in a few years, it makes so much sense. We see the problems people are going through. We had the 2008, 2009 financial crisis happen. It's like, it's writings on the wall. It's needed. And everybody agrees. I'm like, in a few years, it will be mandated. Fast forward 18 years, I'm still here saying the same things. I hope to have a bigger impact. I'm working on it. That's my mission. I'll go to my grave with this mission. I think it's something that will really protect our kids and give them a better, brighter future, and really help them live the American dream. I think the American dream is still just that dream of independence, self-security, and just there's so much opportunity here. These youth have that ability if we can help them just avoid those problems so they can get a little head start compared to what has been going on in the past few decades.
Yeah, it's so important. It's and what's interesting is as I was preparing to talk with you and as we're talking now, I think about things, and I know this makes me sound like, I'm going to tell you a story about walking 2 different ways uphill in the snow, whatever, or the kids going, yeah, Dad, whatever. But it is interesting when you think about some of the stuff that could be changed that's not, partly because there's some people that all they want to do is they want to add, they just want to put a whole bunch of stuff together, and then, all right, schools, you go find somebody to teach this, and you're going, yeah, really? Okay. And then two, just kind of the idea that, they want to put the feather in their cap to say, oh, I passed that bill, without the idea of what it's really all about. Because I got to tell you, having gone different places where, because like I said at the beginning, I wanted to go away from home. I grew up in Daytona Beach, Florida, and I went to a military school in New Mexico right after high school. All right. So that was pretty good. I thought that 17 hours away, and I didn't think I was going back. And so I ran into people, so I had to figure things out because there was no, I couldn't just go home on the weekend. And, it was, and I only had so much cash, and I had that little checking account, and you had to figure stuff out like that. And I think one of the problems is that it's become so much of a thing that you see because I'm not that ancient history. I mean, there are people that at that place where I went, that military academy, if you had a car, they made you lock it up. So you weren't allowed to have it every night. You had to have special permission to use it. But you still had some people who had the fancy cars and stuff like this. And, and I think it's so easy. I mean, they look at Instagram, they look at social media of all sorts, and people are saying, oh, look at me. Look what I've got this wonderful life. And who knows if it's real or not. And they just see all that stuff. And so I'm talking about all kinds of things, but where I'm really going with this is, so what would you, as a basic level introductory personal finance course, what would you think that needs to be included in that? What's something that it would look like if Vince was the one saying, this is what we got to do at the very least?
Yeah, for youth, I think for kids, elementary school, I think that's really when this needs to be introduced. It's really understanding the basics, but more getting them to habits, developing reasons, and also the behaviors, right? The behavior molding. Getting parental involvement at that age is important through chore systems. So they're working, earning money, they're paying part of the household bills even. So they're introduced to that expenses. They're saving and they're buying their own things. So when the kid goes to the store, they're not throwing a fit, the mom's paying for something, and then now we've reinforced a negative habit. Instead, hey, when the kid goes to the store, say, hey, I want to buy this, the mom can have a conversation. Well, hey, little Johnny, you wanted to buy this bike. Yeah, you have the money to buy this teddy bear. What do you want? That will delay your bike purchase. You do whatever you want, right? So having those conversations, having that kid think through, oh, I want that bike, and having them develop their own reasons and making their own purchase decisions and living with the consequences. So elementary school, I think, is key, and schools can get involved there as well. I think as a real support system for parents, right? Hey, here's resources, here's things that can help. Here's some class on how to help your kids develop good, positive behaviors. High school, I think it really comes down to preparing them for near-term decisions. Like we talked about earlier, it's like, I remember when I went into college, the first thing I saw on campus was, hey, get a free slice of pizza for this credit card. And, that's when you turn 18, you got to prepare these kids. You're going to get inundated with these credit card offers in the mail. They can't do those on-campus displays anymore. But they're still very prevalent in finding unique ways on there. You can't get free pizza for an application, but I remember mine was a waiter busboy. I think it was $8,000 or $12,000 was my first credit card limit. I'm like, wow, that's cool. All right.
Nice.
I was not making that. I don't think a year, maybe I was, if I counted the cash, but, so I think it's just preparing them for those life events that take most people off course, helping them, live independent, encouraging them to get out and move out on their own, even when it's expensive, encouraging them to get a job. I think every kid should have a job in high school, like we discussed. So it's preparing them for the real world. The real world's busy. You just don't have school, friends, parties. We have to commit some of our effort toward making sure that we're able to pay our bills, and do those things. So I think, again, that preparation, just so they don't get off course. One of the things I think should be mandated for anybody going to college and taking out student loans is a class on student loan debt. It's just amazing that, when we have, a third of the people that enter college drop out. I mean, that's scary. And half of those are because of financial reasons. So there's a major problem there. And when kids graduate, they don't realize I used to do college tours, spoke with tens of thousands of college students. And I would say less than five, I would always ask the question, how many people know how much you owe, but when you graduate, how much you owe in student loan debt? Handfuls of people in the tens of thousands. When I asked, how much will your repayments be when you graduate? Do you have any idea? One kid of all this UNLV, I still remember him. He stayed after class. We chatted for about 2 hours. He was super, he was ready, right? He studied everything. Was a great, great guy. But of all those people, he was the only one that knew, hey, this is kind of where my payment range will be. I don't know if other people are just shy, but that one is the only one that stood out of all those. So just simple things like that. I think with schooling, they encourage and parents, it's like, oh, go to college, go to college, go to college. My high school counselor said, oh, go to, tour the, 5-10 colleges you like, and then pick the best one. There's no mention of money, ROI, what career I want to be, nothing. So I think a lot of it, any major decision, college is the biggest investment people will make early on. Nothing's taught. So just preparing them for those things that get people off track. And I think, hey, if you can avoid just a few mistakes early on in life, you're going to be set up for a much brighter future.
Love it. Great stuff. Because you're so right. I mean, it's just having enough to talk about what it costs to, I think one of my favorite topics that as you transition from high school and eventually into that apartment or whatever you might be living in, is as you start realizing that when you're bringing home a paycheck, there's certain entity that takes so much of your paycheck from you. Yeah.
I just wrote a big check last week, so I'm very, very aware.
And I think that's probably one of the things that surprises kids the most. Is they go, man, it's already small enough, and then that happens, and it's like, yeah, nice. So, good stuff. All right,
Michael, so why are they taking my money?
yeah, exactly. Why are they taking my money? I made this money. Yeah, I like that. All right, Vince. Let's talk about this. If you were the closing keynote speaker at a meeting of school superintendents, what would you want them to remember about the need to change high school curriculum when they left your talk?
Yeah, really try to focus them on what they want for their students. So really trying to create that emotional attachment. And most teachers, most administrators, they want what's best for the kids. I can look back in my schooling and just see those people. You could tell when there's some that really, really care, right? And I think those people, it's like you can pull in the heartstrings a bit to say, hey, it doesn't matter what the policy is. It doesn't matter what the requirements are. It doesn't matter what people are telling you that you need for college. It doesn't matter what the government politicians are telling you. We need to do what's right for these kids. How many of you wish you were taught about money when you were younger? How many of you wish you would have avoided financial mistakes when you were younger? How many people would want this for your own kids? We're really trying to pull on their heartstrings so they apply and adopt personal finance standards that will make a real difference. Not just, hey, we're going to have, we do again a lot of teacher training. I'll be teaching coaches, math instructors, just people that have no experience in personal finance. So it's, what's your commitment level? Can we get teachers trained? Can we use vetted, proven curriculum? Can we set aside some funds for that? Can we do some clear outcomes that just aren't pre and post test reliant, but are also measuring sentiment, willingness to adopt behaviors, behavior modification, and actual outcomes? Can we take it to that level where we know it will actually make a difference versus a 20-hour class on personal finance, right? And I always say that when some of these states will have a 20-hour requirement for personal finance. I'm like, well, could you speak a foreign language after 20 hours? Absolutely not. So let's really enact classes that will make a real difference and commit to this. I think it should be progressively increasing in intensity as we get to the high school senior year. But I think it should start as a freshman and continue to scaffold and grow to build their skill sets. So they're learning those things in a safe, secure environment. So they've gone through those project-based learning activities. So they already have a plan to move out. They have the budget. They've called the cell phone company. They know how much it will be. They know how much it will be to turn on gas. They've done that. Maybe they found a roommate in the class. They've negotiated with that roommate rules for the house, which I didn't have when I first moved out. Didn't have house rules. Didn't know that you had to put a big deposit down for gas and electric. I remember I moved out 3 people. We all had to hustle that next few weekends to get that money to turn on the gas and electric. So just, those things, and it can be so fun, right? Personal finance is a fun topic. Kids want to learn about it. There's strong reasons. And it's a unique subject. It's not like math, 1 + 1 always equals 2. With personal finance, everybody has a different socioeconomic status, different goals, different behaviors, different habits. They've had different parental upbringing, and they're going different places in life. So it's a real challenging subject. So let's commit to really addressing this with the intensity it needs. And hopefully we find a few people that would agree and get some good policy change there.
I love it. I love it. This is awesome. By the way, you got me thinking about one of my favorite memories. One afternoon, when I was high school principal, one afternoon I'm going out in my car, and so it's about 5:30, 6 o'clock, something like this, and a young man was riding his bicycle, came up, and he saw me there, and I had a 1996 Toyota Corolla, and this is 2003. Okay, so kind of get the idea that I bought the car used. And the kid looks at me and he says, "Hey, Mr. Mileto," he goes, "I thought principal was supposed to have fancy cars." And I said, "Yeah, but I own that." And I said, "I'm not paying anything." And he said, "Oh, hey, that makes sense." and he left me, and I just thought, yeah, it is cool that I own it. It was a car in good shape and didn't owe anybody else any more money on that. But I think about that because there are a lot of people who they just buy stuff to stay up with the Joneses, or whatever that saying is,
Yeah, you see any college parking lot these days, I'm like, damn, these are nice cars. I'm still, even here in Texas, I'm like, where? I was driving a beat up green pickup truck, and I'm like, man, I see BMW and Mercedes. I'm like, what kind of college is this? I mean, how are these kids getting paid? So it's a whole different thing.
It really is. It's something else out there. Vince, where can our listeners find additional information, connect, and learn more?
Yeah, a few places. Our website's financialeducatorscouncil.org. A lot of resources, a lot of support for teachers and administrators, so forth. If you want to personally connect with me on LinkedIn, Vince Shorb. I always like to connect with anybody passionate about this cause. Also on YouTube, at National Financial Educators Council, I do all the reviews of states. So I do very comprehensive reviews of state financial education mandates and other education topics centered around personal finance. So I appreciate that. But yeah, anybody that has any type of interest, I always love to connect with them.
Very cool. And I'll put that information in the show notes, and it's easy to find and connect. Good stuff. All right. So 2 last questions I like to ask my guests. And the first one goes like this. How do you keep going when so much is going on that you may want to quit?
Yeah, I think I just live with a mission at heart. So, there's always challenges, always things going on. I just see life as greater than me at this point. So it's cool. It keeps me motivated. And I wish, somebody was there when I was in school that was pushing this as well. So I think that's one of the big reasons, and just want to, I know in one of my, even though it may not seem like a big deal, when I started this company, I was volunteering for local schools and nonprofits around. I was in Huntington Beach, California, and I was at Huntington Beach High School, and I did this class, I think, for 6-8 weeks, something like that, for a career technical education teacher, real great teacher. And about a year or 2 later, this young lady came up to me at Target. She said, "Hey, I don't know if you remember me, but you taught a class at Huntington. And I just want to let you know, I started, doing the company savings plan as soon as I could." I forget what she's doing, like $100 paycheck or $100 a month. I forget. But, I'm like, damn, it hit me. And I'm like, if I fast forward in her life, those little 6-8 week class, whatever, if I fast forward in life, what that would mean to her later, that can make a very big difference. So those little wins, those keep me going as well. And those are just kind of, now that we're not boots on the ground so much, I rely on our certified educators and people that are sharing those stories with me. But I do miss those. As a CEO, I kind of miss those times of hearing those personal experiences that I did, but I still take pride in knowing that, hey, our educators are getting those, which goes to me. It seems a little filtered, But that's one of my favorite stories on when I first started. And that's a big reason I'm still here, and it motivates me. Those little notes, those little feedbacks where I know, hey, it's making a real difference.
Very cool. I love it. Love it. Last question for you. Do you have a teacher in your past who made a difference in your life? If so, who was it? And what would you say if given the chance to say thank you?
Yeah. I have really two that stand out. One, I went to a Catholic school when I was in elementary school. And Sister Maria, she actually risked her nunship for me. I had a disagreement with the Monsignor and the principal, and I was in the right. Everybody agreed I'm in the right, but she stood up for me. She says, hey, he's right. You guys back off. And I was like, wow. So Sister Maria risked her nunship. I mean, she trained for, I don't know how many years to do that. She risked everything for me. And so that's a standout. Just she took that time. Also, Jim Abbott, he was a teacher in high school. And what I really liked, he always had what's called a Jimbo or Jim. He was very, never Mr. Abbott. He was always something, being a friendship type thing. So, every at the end of every class, he took 10 minutes out. It's free time for everybody in class. He took 10 minutes outside with the individual student. That was throughout the entire year. He always met with students every day. So every day, 10 minutes, 15 minutes at the end, he would meet with people. And I just found that very valuable because you could just tell he had that extra concern for each student, gave some great advice, shared his personal experiences. And you can see he was really committed to just helping people. And he knew every kid was unique. Every kid was different, had different goals. And he took that time to understand. And he just didn't take that time, when you met with them again, 3-4 weeks later, he'd be like, hey, how's that going with this girl? Or how's this going with the sport? Or how's this going with this class, right? So he remembered, and just a really good guy.
That's awesome. I appreciate it, Sharon. And Vince, thank you so much for talking with us about the National Financial Educators Council, personal finance classes, employee soft skills, and changing high school curriculum to assist students for entering the coming work world. This is an awesome topic. What an incredible conversation, and I'm wishing you the best in all you do. Hey, you have been listening to Teaching, Learning, Leading K-12, a podcast to help you help kids achieve their dreams. Teaching, Learning, Leading K-12 is a member of the Education Podcast Network. Podcasts for educators, podcasts by educators. Teaching, Learning, Leading K-12 is a member of the podcast network based in Canada called Voice Ed Radio. Voice Ed Radio, your voice is right. The opinions expressed on Teaching, Learning, Leading K-12 are those of the guests and host. Teaching, Learning, Leading K-12 is intended to share ideas, advice, and suggestions. Teaching, Learning, Leading K-12 is produced for educational purposes. Hey, thanks for listening. It would be awesome if you visited my website at stephenmiletto.com and connected with me, left a review, and listened to more episodes. And by the way, you could also share it with your friends, with your family, and your colleagues. Thanks so much. You're awesome.